Emperor Kithra sat on his crystalline throne, watching the tactical display with cold satisfaction. The numbers scrolled past in glowing blue text. 5,731 confirmed eliminations. All children. All human. The bridge of his flagship Eternal Dominion hummed with quiet efficiency. His officers, a mix of scaled Vorthak and insectoid hive minds, monitored their stations without emotion. They had learned long ago not to question his methods. The Galactic Empire had stood for 3,000 years because of decisive action, not sentiment. Your Imperial Majesty, Admiral Zekthorn approached, his forearms carrying data tablets. The cleansing of Colony 779 is complete. No survivors detected. Kithra's 6 eyes remained fixed on the display. The human settlement had been small, barely 10,000 souls, but it had harbored resistant sympathizers. In his empire, sympathy for rebellion was as dangerous as rebellion itself. Casualties among our forces, he asked, his voice a low rumble that resonated through his chest cavity. Minimal, sire, 12 wounded, none fatal. The humans fought with their usual recklessness, but primitive weapons against our battlesuits proved inadequate. The Emperor nodded. Humans were curious creatures. Despite being one of the youngest species in the galaxy, they had spread faster than any other race in recorded history. Their colonies dotted the outer rim, their merchants traveled every trade route, their diplomats sat in the Galactic Senate. They were adaptable, innovative, and dangerously unpredictable. That was precisely why they had to be controlled. The children fought as well, Admiral Zekthorn continued, consulting his tablet. Even the youngest ones attempted to shield their elders. Fascinating behavioral pattern. Kithra's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his species. Humans are sentimental about their young. It makes them weak. The tactical display shifted, showing the next target, Colony 881. Another human settlement, this one larger. Intelligence suggested it housed a training facility for human freedom fighters. The irony wasn't lost on him. In a galaxy where countless species lived in harmony under imperial rule, humans insisted on clinging to concepts like independence and self-determination. Prepare the fleet for the next engagement, Kithra commanded. I want 881 glassed by tomorrow's cycle. Yes, Your Imperial Majesty. Shall we issue the standard evacuation warning? No. The Emperor's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Complete elimination. Leave nothing that can carry their poisonous ideologies to other colonies. As his officers hurried to carry out his orders, Kithra allowed himself a moment of reflection. He had ruled the Galactic Empire for 230 years. He had seen species rise and fall, watched civilizations bloom and wither. The secret to longevity wasn't just military. Might, though his fleets were unmatched, it was understanding which threats needed to be eliminated before they could mature. Humans were such a threat. They had been part of the Empire for only 50 years, but already they were causing problems. Their representatives in the Senate asked uncomfortable questions about imperial policy. Their scientists made discoveries that challenged established thinking. Their artists created works that stirred emotions in other species, making them question their place in the cosmic order. Worse still, humans bred like parasites and their children absorbed information at an alarming rate. A human child could learn 3 galactic languages before most species learned to walk properly. They formed emotional bonds not just with their own kind but with any species they encountered. The Emperor had seen the reports. Human children on mixed colonies were teaching other young beings concepts like fairness and justice and equality. These ideas spread like a plague, infecting entire generations with dangerous thoughts about imperial authority. So the children had to go first. Sire, Communications Officer Veltar interrupted his thoughts. We're receiving a transmission from the inner worlds. Priority Alpha. Put it through. The holographic display materialized above the tactical table. Senator Morden of the Centauri Coalition appeared, his blue-scaled features tight with concern. Your Imperial Majesty, the senator began carefully, I must express the concerns of several inner-world governments regarding the recent actions against human colonies. Kithra's 6 eyes focused on the hologram with predatory intensity. Express away, Senator. The elimination of civilian populations, particularly children, is causing unrest among our member species. Many are questioning whether what, Senator? The Emperor's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Whether I know how to maintain order in my own empire? Of course not, sire. We simply wonder if perhaps a more measured approach might achieve the same results without generating sympathy for human resistance movements. The Emperor stood slowly, his massive frame casting shadows across the bridge. At 12 feet tall and weighing nearly half a ton, he was an imposing figure even among his own warrior species. Senator Morton, he said, each word precise and cold. Do you have children? The question caught the senator off guard. I guess, Your Majesty. 2 offspring. And you love them, I assume? Naturally, sire. Then you understand why human children must die. Not because I am cruel, Senator, but because I am wise. Today's human child becomes tomorrow's human adult, filled with human ideas about human freedom. Better to pluck the weed while it is small than wait for it to strangle the garden. The senator's hologram flickered as he struggled for words. Finally he managed, As you command, Your Imperial Majesty. Indeed, as I command. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Kithara returned to his throne, his mind already moving to the next phase of his campaign. 7 more human colonies needed to be cleansed before the month's end. After that, he would turn his attention to the mining worlds where human workers had been spreading their infectious optimism among the indentured Korali population. It would be systematic. It would be thorough. And when it was finished, the galaxy would remember why the Empire had endured for 3 millennia, while countless other civilizations had crumbled to dust. The Emperor settled back into his crystalline seat, watching the stars wheel past the bridge windows. Tomorrow would bring another colony, another necessary elimination. He felt no guilt about the 5,631 small bodies cooling in the ruins of their settlement. After all, he was saving the galaxy from something far worse than death. He was saving it from hope. 3 days later, Emperor Kithara stood in his private chambers aboard the Eternal Dominion, studying intelligence reports from across the galaxy. The numbers were encouraging. Human birth rates had dropped by 37% in the past year, as word of the cleansings spread through their colonies. Fear was proving to be an excellent population control mechanism. His personal aide, a cybernetically enhanced Nexus unit designated Prime 7, approached with the day's briefings. Unlike his organic officers, Prime 7 felt no discomfort with the Emperor's methods. Artificial minds were wonderfully practical about such matters. Status report on Colony 881? Kithara asked without looking up from his tactical projections. Complete elimination achieved, Your Imperial Majesty. No structures remain intact. Orbital bombardment was comprehensive. Resistance encountered? Minimal. The humans attempted to evacuate their young through a network of underground tunnels. Our seismic charges collapsed the entire system while they were still inside. Kithara nodded approvingly. Humans were predictable in their desperation to save their offspring. It made them easy to trap. What of the other colonies? Have they received the message? Intelligence indicates significant emigration from rim territories toward the core worlds. However, many human settlements appear to be fortifying rather than fleeing. This was unexpected. In Kithara's experience, most species chose flight over fight when faced with overwhelming force. The smart ones anyway. Show me. Prime 7 activated a holographic display of the galaxy's outer rim. Red dots marked confirmed human colonies, while yellow indicated suspected settlements. There were far more yellow dots than intelligence had previously estimated. These colonies, Prime 7 highlighted several clusters, have gone dark to our surveillance networks. No communications traffic, no trade manifests, no registry updates. They appear to be implementing some form of communication blackout. Preparing for siege, Kithara mused. How quaint. Do they truly believe their primitive defenses can withstand Imperial battle groups? Unknown, sire. However, there is another concerning development. The hologram shifted, showing shipping routes throughout the mid-rim territories. Normally, these would be brilliant streams of commercial traffic. Instead, vast sections showed as dark voids. Non-human vessels have begun avoiding sectors with significant human populations. Trade has decreased by 62% in affected regions. Several species have lodged formal protests with the Galactic Trade Commission. Kithara's mandibles clicked in irritation. Commerce was the lifeblood of the Empire. If other species were allowing sentiment to interfere with profit, the situation was more serious than he'd anticipated. Have you identified the source of this? Hesitation among our trading partners? Yes, Your Imperial Majesty. The primary catalyst appears to be footage from Colony 779. Footage? Kithara's voice carried a dangerous edge. I ordered complete communications blackout during the operation. The blackout was implemented perfectly, sire. However, a human merchant vessel was departing the system during our arrival. Long-range sensors detected their escape, but Admiral Zekthorn deemed pursuit unnecessary given the vessel's minimal strategic value. The Emperor's 6 eyes focused with laser intensity. That merchant vessel recorded our operation? Affirmative. The footage has been distributed through underground networks across 12 sectors. It shows Prime 7 paused, accessing the relevant files. It shows Imperial forces systematically eliminating human children who had taken shelter in what appeared to be a school facility. Kithara was silent for a long moment. In 3 centuries of rule, he had learned that perception often mattered more than reality. The galaxy's lesser species tolerated Imperial authority because it brought stability and prosperity. If they began to view that authority as monstrous, what is the content of this footage specifically? The recording is approximately 47 minutes in length. It shows human younglings, estimated ages between 4 and 16 standard years, attempting to hide in educational facilities. Imperial forces used flame units to force them from cover, then conducted systematic termination. And the reaction among non-human species? Mixed but predominantly negative. The Centaurian Collective has suspended all military cooperation agreements. The Andromedan Fellowship has imposed trade sanctions on 3 Imperial suppliers. Most concerning, the Ethereal Syndicate has begun questioning the moral authority of Imperial governance. This was problematic. The Ethereals were among the galaxy's oldest species, their approval lending legitimacy to Imperial rule. If they were having doubts, sire, Prime 7 continued, there is additional intelligence that may be relevant. Proceed. Our Xenopsychology Division has been monitoring emotional resonance patterns among various species exposed to the footage. Humans, as expected, show extreme trauma and rage responses. However, other species are displaying what can only be described as protective instincts. Protective instincts toward humans? Toward human children specifically. Dr. Velcris believes this may be related to certain universal mammalian triggers that transcend species barriers. Human offspring apparently possess physiological characteristics that activate nurturing responses in 67% of known sentient species. Kithara processed this information with growing unease. He had chosen to target human children precisely because they represented future resistance. He had not considered that their elimination might activate protective instincts in other species. Recommendations from the Xenopsychology Division. Dr. Velcris suggests that continued targeting of human young may be counterproductive to long-term Imperial stability. She recommends focusing elimination efforts on adult resistance leaders while implementing standard re-education protocols for younger populations. The Emperor's reflection was interrupted by an urgent communication from his intelligence chief. Your Imperial Majesty. Director Kalmesh's voice crackled through the comm system. We have a priority situation developing in the Kepler sector. Report. A coalition of 7 species has established what they're calling safe harbor protocols for human refugees. They're offering sanctuary to any humans fleeing Imperial space, with particular emphasis on families with children. Kithara felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: uncertainty. The Empire's strength lay in the predictable self-interest of its member species. If they were choosing moral posturing over practical benefit, which species? He demanded. The Corelli Confederacy, the Thessarian Republic, Vegan Trade Union, the Proxima Collective, the Arcturus Foundation, the Rigel Syndicate, and... Director Kalmesh paused. The Ethereal Syndicate. The silence on the bridge stretched for nearly a minute. The Ethereals hadn't taken political action in over 1,000 years. Their involvement legitimized the coalition in ways that would be difficult to counter through conventional means. Your orders, sire? Prime 7 asked. Kithara stared at the Galactic display, watching the slow pulse of trade routes and communication networks that bound the Empire together. For 3 millennia, that web had been held together by a careful balance of fear and prosperity. Now, for the first time in his reign, he wondered if he had miscalculated. Double the security protocols around all human colonies, he ordered finally. and prepare a full psychological warfare assessment. I want to know exactly how far this protective instinct extends before we proceed further. And the Coalition offering sanctuary, Your Imperial Majesty? Kether's 6 eyes gleamed with cold fury. That will require a more personal response. Emperor Kithara had not slept in 47 hours. Sleep was a luxury his species could forego during times of crisis, and this was rapidly becoming the greatest crisis of his 3-century reign. The situation had escalated beyond his worst projections. What began as a simple pacification operation against human colonies had somehow evolved into a galaxy-wide moral controversy. His intelligence networks reported that 17 species had now formally condemned the targeting of innocents, while 12 more had quietly suspended various cooperation agreements. Standing in the war room of the Eternal Dominion, he studied the holographic representation of known space. Red zones marked areas of active resistance. Yellow zones indicated political tension. The map was almost entirely red and yellow now. Update from the Kepler sector? He demanded. Admiral Zekthorn stepped forward, his forearms clasped behind his back in military posture. The situation has deteriorated, Your Imperial Majesty. The Safe Harbor Coalition has established defensive platforms around 3-star systems. They're actively interdicting our scout ships. And our response? Limited, sire. A direct assault would require engaging multiple coalition fleets simultaneously. Intelligence estimates suggest they've pooled their resources to create a combined force that could seriously challenge even our primary battle groups. Kithara's mandibles ground together audibly. In all his years of rule, no one had dared to directly challenge Imperial military supremacy. The member species knew their place. They provided resources and compliance, while the Empire provided protection and order. What of the human refugees? How many have reached coalition space? Conservative estimates place the number at approximately 2 million, Director Kalmesh reported from his position at the intelligence station. However, the true concern is not the refugees themselves. Explain. The coalition species have begun what they call cultural integration programs. Human children are being placed with families from various species for protection and education. These mixed family units are bonding in ways our xenopsychologists didn't anticipate. The Emperor's 6 eyes focused sharply. Bonding how? Corelli adults, for example, have begun exhibiting parental behaviors toward human children in their care. The Thessarians have formally adopted over 300 human younglings into their clan structures. Most significantly, the Ethereals have declared human children under their protection to be blessed ones with full cultural status. This was worse than political resistance. It was cultural contamination on a massive scale. The Empire had always maintained order through careful species segregation. Different worlds, different roles, different levels of autonomy. If the barriers began breaking down, Sire, Prime 7 interrupted, we have received a formal communication from the Coalition leadership. They request an immediate cessation of hostilities against human civilian populations. Request? Kithara's voice carried enough menace to silence the entire war room. They request? They also extend an invitation for diplomatic negotiations regarding the status of human colonies within Imperial space. The audacity was breathtaking. In 3,000 years, no coalition of Imperial subjects had dared to demand negotiations with the Emperor. Yet here were 7 species that owed their prosperity to Imperial protection, treating him as an equal rather than their absolute sovereign. Your response, Your Imperial Majesty? Admiral Zekthorn asked carefully. Kithara was about to order the immediate mobilization of the entire Imperial Navy when an alarm klaxon began blaring throughout the ship. Emergency lights bathed the war room in pulsing red illumination. Report, he commanded. Multiple hyperspace signatures detected, the sensor officer called out. Massive fleet emergence at the edge of the system. The holographic display shifted to show local space around the Eternal Dominion. Kithara's flagship was surrounded by his personal battle group, 12 dreadnoughts, 47 cruisers, and over 200 smaller vessels. It was enough firepower to conquer most civilizations single-handedly. The ships now appearing on the display outnumbered his force by approximately 4-1. Ship identification, Admiral Zekthorn demanded. Coalition vessels, sir. I'm reading Corelli heavy cruisers, Thessarian battle carriers, Proxima stealth destroyers, and the sensor officer's voice faltered. And what, officer? Ethereal world ships, sir. 3 of them. The war room fell silent. Ethereal world ships were essentially mobile planets, each one housing billions of beings and carrying enough firepower to crack continents. They hadn't been seen in Imperial space for over 5 centuries. Incoming transmission, Communications Officer Veltar announced. Multiple sources, but the primary signal is coming from the lead ethereal vessel. Put it through. The holographic display shifted again, showing not a single figure but a council of 7 beings, each representing one of the coalition species. At the center stood an ethereal, a being of pure energy contained within a translucent crystalline form, its consciousness ancient beyond human comprehension. Emperor Kithara, the ethereal spoke, its voice resonating through harmonics that touched the edge of perception. We come to you not as subjects but as equals. We seek dialogue. For nearly a minute, Kithara stared at the display without responding. The implications were staggering. The coalition hadn't just formed a political alliance. They had created a military federation capable of challenging imperial authority directly. You enter my space with warships, he said finally, and call it dialogue. We enter with protection, the Corelli representative replied. Her species' natural diplomacy was evident in her tone. Just as you brought protection when you entered human space with warships. The humans were in rebellion against lawful imperial authority. The humans were defending their children, the Thessarian council member interjected. His warrior species rarely spoke at diplomatic gatherings, making his presence significant. Something any parent of any species would do. Your Imperial Majesty, the ethereal continued, we have come to offer you a choice. You may continue your campaign against human civilians and face the combined opposition of our coalition, or you may join us in finding a more constructive path forward. You threaten me? Kithara's voice dropped to a predatory whisper. You dare threaten the Galactic Empire? We offer you wisdom, the ethereal replied without emotion. In your 3 centuries of rule, you have maintained order through strength. But strength alone cannot maintain order against universal moral revulsion. The Emperor looked around his war room. His officers stood frozen, waiting for orders that could ignite the first galactic civil war in 3 millennia. His tactical computers showed engagement scenarios, almost all of which ended in catastrophic losses for both sides. But it was the psychological warfare assessment that troubled him most. His own xenopsychology division had confirmed what the coalition claimed, that the systematic killing of human children had triggered protective instincts across multiple species. Instincts that transcended political loyalty. What exactly are you proposing? He asked. Recognition of human colony autonomy, the Proxima representative stated. Cessation of elimination campaigns. Establishment of formal diplomatic relations between the Empire and human territorial representatives. You ask me to legitimize rebellion. We ask you to prevent genocide, the ethereal said. Simply, the word hung in the air like a weapon. Genocide. In 3,000 years of imperial expansion, that accusation had never been leveled against an emperor. Other species had been conquered, relocated, or absorbed, but never systematically eliminated. The humans are not being eliminated, Kithara protested. Only those engaged in active resistance. 5,731 children. The Vegan representative spoke for the first time. Were they engaged in active resistance, Your Imperial Majesty? The number hit him like a physical blow. Somehow they knew the exact count. More than that, they had made it central to their moral argument against him. Kithara realized with growing unease that he was no longer fighting a military campaign or even a political rebellion. He was fighting for the moral legitimacy of imperial rule itself. The standoff continued for 6 hours. 2 massive fleets faced each other across the void, weapons powered but not yet firing. Emperor Kithara had retreated to his private chambers, leaving Admiral Zekthorn to maintain battle readiness while he considered options that grew more limited by the hour. His intelligence network painted an increasingly grim picture. Across the galaxy, species were choosing sides. Some remained loyal to the Empire out of fear or genuine allegiance, but many others were openly supporting the coalition. For the first time in 3 millennia, Imperial authority was being questioned not by conquered peoples seeking freedom, but by member species questioning the moral foundation of imperial rule. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority communication. Prime 7 materialized in holographic form. The android was currently managing fleet communications from the bridge. Your Imperial Majesty, we have received an unusual transmission. It appears to be from one of the human colonies scheduled for elimination. Kithra's attention sharpened. Which colony? Colony 947 in the Tau Ceti system. The transmission was sent on an open frequency, broadcasting to both our fleet and the coalition vessels. Content? The transmission consists of a single individual speaking directly to camera. Duration is approximately 3 minutes. Intelligence assessment suggests it may be some form of propaganda attempt. The Emperor considered this. Propaganda was a predictable response from desperate rebels. Still, understanding enemy tactics was important. Display it. The holographic projection filled his chambers. The image showed what appeared to be a small room with basic furnishings, clearly part of a colony habitat. Seated at a simple table was a human child, perhaps 10 or 11 years old by their species' development standards. The child had the typical human features: soft skin, large eyes, minimal body hair. What struck Kithara immediately was the complete absence of fear in the young being's expression. Most humans, adult or child, showed terror when facing Imperial forces. This one simply looked tired. "My name is Emma Chen," the child began, speaking directly to the camera with startling composure. "I live on Colony 947 with my parents and my little brother. I'm recording this message because I heard that Emperor Kithara is coming to kill us." The directness was unexpected. Human resistance propaganda usually involved emotional appeals or angry denunciations. This child spoke as if discussing ordinary facts. "I know about the other colonies," she continued. "I know about the 57 and 31 kids who died. I counted them. Their names are Sarah Martinez, age 6, from Colony 779. Marcus Webb, age 14, from the same place. Lisa Okafor, age 9. Kithara watched in growing discomfort as the child began reciting names. Not just random names, but specific individuals with ages and colony designations. She had somehow obtained detailed casualty reports from the cleansing operations. Tommy Harrison, age 7, Amy Patel, age 12, Chen Wei Ming, age 8. He was my cousin. Her voice caught slightly on that last name, the first crack in her composure. But she continued. "I want to ask Emperor Kithara a question. Just one question. When you killed my cousin Wei Ming, when you killed all those kids, what did you think would happen?" The child leaned forward slightly, her large eyes staring directly into the camera, and by extension directly at him. "Did you think their parents would just forget? Did you think their brothers and sisters would just move on? Did you think the galaxy would just pretend it never happened?" Kithara found himself unable to look away. There was something unsettling about the child's steady gaze, her calm voice reciting questions that cut to the heart of his strategic miscalculations. "Because we don't forget. Humans never forget. We remember every kindness and we remember every cruelty. And when you hurt our children, when you hurt any children, you don't just make enemies of humans. You make enemies of everyone who ever loved a child." The child reached below the camera's view and lifted something into frame, a small stuffed animal, worn and obviously well-loved. This was Wei Ming's favorite toy. His parents gave it to me before they died trying to protect him. "I want you to see it, Emperor Kithara, because I want you to understand something." She held the toy closer to the camera, its simple fabric face visible in detail. "This toy has been hugged by a little boy who trusted the adults around him to keep him safe. It smells like him. It remembers the shape of his arms, and now he's gone because you decided he was a threat. An 8-year-old boy with a stuffed dragon was a threat to your empire." The child set the toy down gently, her movements careful and reverent. "You want to know what I think? I think you're scared. I think you looked at us humans and saw something that frightened you. Maybe you saw that we don't give up. Maybe you saw that we protect each other. Maybe you saw that when we love someone, we love them forever, even after they're gone." Her voice grew stronger, more confident. "But here's what you didn't see. You didn't see that love isn't just a human thing. The Korali who are protecting human kids now, they understand love. The Thessarians who adopted us into their clans, they understand family. The Ethereals who call us blessed ones, They understand that some things are more important than power. The child stood up from her chair, still looking directly at the camera. So here's my answer to your threat, Emperor Kithara. Yes, you can kill me. You can kill everyone on this colony. Just like you killed Wei Ming and Sarah and Marcus and all the others. But you can't kill what we represent. You can't kill the idea that children should be protected. You can't kill the love that connects all of us, human and non-human alike. She picked up the stuffed dragon again, cradling it against her chest. And you can't kill the fact that when you murder children, you don't look strong. You just look broken. The transmission ended. Kithara stared at the empty space where the child's image had been. In 3 centuries of rule, he had heard countless threats from rebels, desperate pleas from the conquered, and elaborate arguments from diplomats. None of them had affected him the way this simple, direct statement from a human child had. Prime 7's voice broke the silence. Sire, the transmission was broadcast on all frequencies. Both our fleet and the coalition vessels received it simultaneously. I see. There is additional intelligence, Your Imperial Majesty. Our monitoring stations report that the transmission has been rebroadcast across 7 sectors. Multiple species are responding with what can only be described as emotional resonance. Kithara closed his 6 eyes, trying to process what he had just witnessed. The child, Emma, had accomplished something that military strategists and political theorists had failed to achieve. She had articulated exactly why his campaign was failing. He had made the fundamental error of treating war as a purely strategic exercise. Numbers, logistics, force projection. He had calculated that eliminating human children would break human resistance by removing future threats and demoralizing adult populations. What he had not calculated was that the act itself would be seen as monstrous by species throughout the galaxy. Species who had their own children, their own families, their own understanding of love and protection. Sire, Prime 7 prompted. Your orders regarding Colony 947? Kithara stood slowly, his massive frame casting shadows across his chambers. For the first time in 2 centuries, he was truly uncertain about the right course of action. Because for the first time in 2 centuries, he was beginning to suspect that he might be wrong. Emperor Kithara had not spoken for 3 hours. He stood in his private chambers, staring out at the starfield where 2 fleets maintained their tense standoff. The child's words echoed in his mind, each phrase more disturbing than the last. You don't look strong, you just look broken. The accusation gnawed at him because it touched something he had spent 3 centuries refusing to acknowledge. He ruled through fear because fear was simple, predictable, effective. But what happened when fear transformed into revulsion? What happened when strength was perceived as weakness? A soft chime announced an incoming communication. Prime 7's holographic form appeared. But something in the android's posture suggested urgency. Your Imperial Majesty, we have a developing situation. Report. Multiple Imperial battle groups are requesting clarification of their orders. Admiral Korthex of the 5th Fleet reports that several of his ship captains are expressing concerns about civilian targeting protocols. This was unprecedented. Imperial discipline was absolute. Ship captains didn't express concerns about orders. They executed them without question. Define concerns. Prime 7. 3 captains have formally requested confirmation that their orders include the elimination of non-combatant populations. 2 others have filed official requests for transfer to different operational theaters. Significantly, Captain Valkyra of the Dreadnought Iron Fist has submitted a formal conscientious objector declaration. Kithara felt the foundations of his authority shifting beneath his feet. Conscientious objection had not been invoked in Imperial service for over 1,000 years. The legal framework still existed, but it was considered a relic of more primitive times when soldiers allowed emotion to interfere with duty. And Admiral Korthex's response: he has placed Captain Valkyra under arrest pending review. However, 17 other officers in his fleet have since submitted similar declarations. The Emperor's mandibles ground together audibly. Military discipline was the backbone of Imperial power. If that discipline began cracking, there's more, Sire, Prime 7 continued. We've intercepted communications from civilian populations on Imperial core worlds. The human child's transmission has been widely distributed through underground networks. Public opinion surveys indicate significant shifts in approval ratings for current policies. Show me. The holographic display shifted to show polling data from across the Empire's core territories. The numbers were devastating. Support for aggressive peacekeeping operations had dropped from 78% to 31% in just 48 hours. More troubling, 67% of respondents now viewed protection of civilian populations as a higher priority than maintenance of imperial authority. How is this possible? Kithara demanded. These are core world populations. They've benefited from imperial protection for millennia. Analysis suggests that the transmission triggered what xenopsychologists term cross-species empathic resonance, Prime 7 explained. Multiple species share evolutionary traits that create protective responses toward young beings. The human child's directness and composure activated these responses across traditional species barriers. The Emperor studied the data, searching for patterns that might suggest solutions. Instead, he found only confirmation of his growing isolation. Species after species was choosing moral positioning over traditional loyalty. Sire, Prime 7 said softly, there is one additional development that requires your immediate attention. Proceed. We have received a personal communication from your daughter. Kithara's 6 eyes widened in surprise. Princess Kythera was currently serving as governor of the Rigel sector, one of the Empire's most prosperous territories. She had not communicated with him outside of official channels in over 20 years. Display it. The hologram shifted again, showing his daughter's chambers aboard her administrative complex. Princess Kythera possessed the same imposing physical presence as her father, though her manner had always been more diplomatic than militaristic. Father, she began, using the informal address rather than his imperial title, I cannot remain silent about what is happening in human space. Even his own daughter was questioning his judgment. The realization hit him like a physical blow. I have reviewed the casualty reports from the recent operations. I have seen the footage from Colony 779, and I have watched the transmission from the human child Emma Chen. Princess Kythera paused, her own mandibles clicking in what he recognized as emotional distress. Father, I have governed the Rigel sector for 40 years. In that time I have observed many species, including humans. I have seen human children playing with Corrali younglings, sharing toys and games and laughter. I have watched human families adopt orphaned beings from other species, caring for them as their own offspring. She leaned forward, her 6 eyes focused directly on the camera. When I see those children, Father, I do not see threats to imperial stability. I see the future of a truly integrated galactic civilization. A future where species distinctions matter less than shared values like compassion, protection of the innocent, and mutual support. The Emperor found himself remembering his daughter as a youngling herself, how she had always questioned his more brutal policies, how she had advocated for diplomatic solutions over military ones. The human child asked what you thought would happen when you killed 5,131 children, she continued. I can answer that question, Father. You created martyrs. You transformed a localized resistance movement into a galaxy-wide moral crisis. You made enemies of species who had been loyal imperial subjects for millennia. Her voice grew harder, carrying more of his own authority. But most importantly, you made me ashamed to be your daughter. The words struck him with devastating force. In 3 centuries of rule, he had faced rebellion, betrayal, and countless challenges to his authority. None of them had prepared him for the simple statement that his own child was ashamed of him. I am formally requesting that all imperial forces under my sector command be withdrawn from human space immediately, she continued. I will not allow troops carrying my authorization to participate in the systematic murder of children. The transmission ended, leaving Kythera alone with the weight of absolute isolation. His military commanders were questioning orders. His civilian population was turning against his policies. The galactic community had formed a coalition to oppose him. And now his own daughter had openly defied him. For the first time in 3 centuries, Emperor Kythera felt something that he had forgotten existed. Doubt, not tactical uncertainty about optimal strategies, but fundamental doubt about whether his entire approach to governance was wrong, whether the child, Emma Chen, had seen something in him that he had refused to see in himself. Prime 7 spoke softly. Your orders regarding Colony 947, sire? Admiral Zekthorn requires immediate guidance. Kythera stared at the starfield where billions of beings in hundreds of ships waited for his decision. A decision that would determine not just the fate of one human colony, but the future of the Galactic Empire itself. And for the first time in his life, The Emperor of the Galaxy didn't know what that decision should be. Emperor Kithra stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, surrounded by officers who waited for orders that could reshape galactic civilization. The Coalition fleet maintained its position, weapons powered but not targeted. His own forces remained at battle readiness, but he could sense the uncertainty rippling through the ranks. Admiral Zekthorn approached cautiously. "Your Imperial Majesty, we have incoming communications from multiple sources. Colony 947 is requesting permission to evacuate civilians. The Coalition is offering to provide escort vessels and—" He paused. "Several of our own ship captains are requesting clarification of engagement parameters." The Emperor's 6 eyes remained fixed on the tactical display showing Colony 947. According to intelligence reports, the settlement housed approximately 50,000 humans, including nearly 20,000 children. By his previous calculations, it represented a significant concentration of future resistance fighters that needed to be eliminated. Now, those same calculations seemed hollow. The child Emma Chen had forced him to see those numbers differently. Not as tactical assets or threats, but as individual beings with names, families, and stuffed toys. "Sire?" Admiral Zekthorn prompted. Before Kithara could respond, Communications Officer Veltar called out urgently. "Your Imperial Majesty, priority transmission from Colony 947. It's the same human child from before. On screen." The main display shifted to show Emma Chen again, but this time she was not alone. Standing beside her were her parents. 2 adult humans whose faces showed the strain of impending death but whose posture remained protective. Behind them, visible through a window, other colony residents were moving with purpose, preparing for evacuation or siege. "Emperor Kithara," Emma began, her voice as steady as before. "I know your fleet is here. I can see the ships in the sky." The child's directness continued to unsettle him. Most beings facing imminent annihilation would plead or threaten or negotiate. She simply acknowledged reality and moved forward. "I wanted to talk to you one more time before whatever happens next. I've been thinking about what you said about humans being dangerous because we spread ideas. Ideas like freedom and justice and protecting each other." She looked directly at the camera with those unsettling large eyes. "You're right. We do spread those ideas, but I don't think that makes us dangerous. I think it makes us human." Her father placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture of comfort that Kithara found himself recognizing despite the species difference. "But I want to tell you something else. Something I learned from my grandmother before she died. She told me that the strongest people aren't the ones who hurt others. The strongest people are the ones who choose not to hurt others, even when they could." The child reached into her pocket and pulled out the same worn stuffed dragon from her previous transmission. "Wei Ming's dragon has been in my family for 3 generations. My great-grandfather made it for my grandfather when he was little. My grandfather gave it to my father. My father gave it to Wei Ming. And Wei Ming's parents gave it to me before they died." She held the toy up to the camera, its simple fabric face somehow conveying decades of love and protection. "This dragon has been loved by 4 generations of my family. It represents something you can't kill with warships or fear or violence. It represents the choice to love something, to protect something, to pass something good from one generation to the next." Emperor Kithara found himself staring at the simple toy, recognizing something in its worn fabric that he had lost long ago. The memory of being protected rather than being the protector, of being loved rather than feared. "You can kill me," Emma continued. "And you can kill my parents and you can kill everyone on this colony. But you can't kill what this dragon represents. You can't kill the love that created it. And you can't kill the idea that choosing to protect someone is stronger than choosing to hurt them." She set the dragon down carefully, then looked directly into the camera again. "I forgive you, Emperor Kithara." The words hit him like a physical blow. In 3 centuries of rule, no one had ever said those words to him. Subjects begged for mercy. Enemies threatened revenge. Diplomats negotiated terms. But forgiveness? He hadn't heard that word applied to himself since he was a child himself. When his own parent had forgiven him for some long-forgotten transgression. "I forgive you for killing Wei Ming and all the others. I forgive you for being scared of us. I forgive you for thinking that strength means hurting people instead of protecting them." The child's voice grew softer, more personal. But mostly, I forgive you for forgetting what it feels like to be loved. The transmission ended. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion was absolutely silent. Officers stared at their stations, unwilling to look at their emperor. Admiral Zekthorn stood frozen, his forearms still clasped behind his back. Kithra felt something breaking inside his chest, some wall that had stood for 3 centuries, built from fear and maintained by isolation. The human child had done what no military force could accomplish. She had reminded him what he had been before he became what he was. Before he was Emperor Kithara, ruler of the galaxy, he had been Kithara, a youngling whose parent had protected him, loved him, forgiven him when he made mistakes. When had he stopped being that protected child and become the one that other children needed protection from? The answer came to him with devastating clarity. When he chose fear over love, when he chose power over connection, when he chose to be the one who hurt, rather than the one who healed. Admiral Zekthorn, he said quietly. Yes, Your Imperial Majesty. Signal all Imperial forces, immediate cessation of hostile operations against human colonial targets. The Admiral's mandibles clicked in confusion. Sire, you heard me. No more attacks on civilian populations, no more targeting of non-combatants, and absolutely no more operations against children. But sire, the strategic implications, Kithara interrupted, are that an empire built on the murder of children is not an empire worth preserving. He turned to face his bridge crew, seeing uncertainty and surprise in their expressions. Open a channel to the Coalition fleet. Channel open. Sire, Coalition vessels, this is Emperor Kithara. I am prepared to discuss terms for the immediate cessation of hostilities and the establishment of formal diplomatic relations with human territorial representatives. The response came quickly. The ethereal's harmonics filled the bridge with otherworldly music. We acknowledge your communication, Emperor Kithara. We are prepared to engage in dialogue. There is one condition, the Emperor continued. I wish to speak directly with the human child, Emma Chen. I have something to say to her. There was a pause before the ethereal responded. We will relay your request. Minutes later, the display showed Emma again, still in the same room on Colony 947. She looked exactly as composed as before. Hello, Emperor Kithara. Hello, Emma. The words felt strange in his mouth, personal address to a being he had intended to kill. I wanted to tell you something. Okay, I wanted to tell you that you were right. About everything. About strength, about love, about what happens when you hurt children instead of protecting them. The child nodded solemnly. I know it's hard to admit when you're wrong. Yes, he said softly. It is, but that's okay. Making mistakes is how we learn to do better. Emperor Kithara, ruler of the galaxy for 3 centuries, felt tears forming in his 6 eyes, something that hadn't happened since he was Emma's age. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For reminding me what I used to be, for showing me what I could be again. Emma picked up her stuffed dragon and held it close. You're welcome, she said simply, but you have to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll remember that being strong means protecting people, not hurting them. I promise. And for the first time in 3 centuries, Emperor Kithara meant it.